The rain had already swallowed the empty highway when a single pair of headlights cut through the darkness. Every sensible driver kept moving that night, unwilling to stop on a deserted country road in western Pennsylvania. But one man slowed down. One decision. One desperate glance toward a frightened young mother standing barefoot on the roadside with a baby wrapped in a soaked blanket would change not only her future, but his forever. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness can change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in compassion, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that remind us humanity still exists. Jonathan Brooks had spent the last 3 years believing life had already taken everything from him. Living in the quiet town of Franklin, Pennsylvania, he worked long hours repairing heavy construction equipment while raising his 8-year-old daughter, Grace, alone after losing his wife, Rebecca, to cancer. Every morning began before sunrise, and every night ended with exhaustion. He had learned to survive, but surviving was very different from living. His daughter smiled often enough to keep him going, yet the empty seat beside him at dinner reminded him daily that some wounds never completely healed. That rainy October evening, Jonathan was driving home after finishing an emergency repair nearly 2 hours away. The storm had flooded several roads, and visibility was almost non-existent. His only thought was getting home before Grace fell asleep. Then his headlights revealed a figure standing beside the highway. She looked no older than 24. Her burgundy coat was soaked by the relentless rain. She clutched a tiny baby against her chest, trying desperately to shield the infant with the last dry corner of a white blanket. Her face carried the unmistakable expression of someone who had stopped expecting help long ago. Jonathan almost kept driving. Years of warnings about dangerous roadside situations echoed inside his head. He drove another 100 feet before guilt tightened around his heart. He remembered Rebecca once saying that sometimes God places people in front of us simply to see whether we notice them. He pressed the brakes. As he stepped into the rain, the young woman looked terrified rather than relieved. Fear had become her natural response to strangers. Her name was Sarah Collins, and the baby in her arms was 6-month-old Noah. She explained with trembling words that the car she had been riding in had broken down several miles back. The man who had promised to help her had disappeared after making a phone call, leaving her stranded with no money, no phone battery, and nowhere safe to go. Jonathan noticed the baby's tiny hands were cold despite the blanket. Without hesitation, he invited them into the warm truck. The heater slowly chased away the cold while Noah finally stopped crying. Sarah held him tightly, apologizing over and over for being a burden. Jonathan simply handed her a dry towel from behind the seat and continued driving toward the nearest small diner that remained open late. Inside the cozy restaurant, the smell of fresh coffee and homemade soup replaced the bitter scent of rain. Sarah ate slowly, almost as though she felt guilty for accepting food. Noah drank warm formula the waitress kindly prepared, and color gradually returned to his cheeks. Jonathan learned pieces of Sarah's story that night. She had grown up in Ohio, lost both parents before turning 21, and believed she had found love in a charming man named Kyle. Instead, Kyle isolated her from friends, controlled every dollar she earned, and disappeared completely after Noah was born, leaving behind unpaid bills and broken promises. Desperate to escape an abusive living situation, Sarah had accepted a ride from another acquaintance who abandoned her when the vehicle failed. Listening quietly, Jonathan recognized something painfully familiar. Different circumstances had broken them, but grief always sounded the same. The storm worsened outside. No hotels nearby had available rooms because of flooding, and the nearest shelter was over an hour away. Jonathan faced a difficult decision. Inviting strangers home was risky. Driving away would haunt him forever. He remembered Grace asking him only a week earlier why good people sometimes ignored those who needed help. At the time, he had no answer. Now life demanded one. Jonathan brought Sarah and Noah home, carefully explaining the situation to Grace. Instead of fear, Grace welcomed them with innocent kindness that only children seemed capable of. She offered Noah her favorite blanket and insisted Sarah sleep in her own bedroom while she happily took the couch beside her father. That single act of generosity filled the quiet house with warmth it had not known for years. The following morning, Jonathan helped Sarah contact a local women's resource center. While waiting for assistance, she insisted on helping around the house. She cleaned, cooked simple meals, and even repaired Grace's torn backpack with surprising skill. Days became weeks. The shelter had limited space, and Sarah continued searching for work while staying temporarily with Jonathan. Their arrangement remained respectful, built entirely on gratitude rather than obligation. Grace quickly grew attached to baby Noah. For the first time since Rebecca's passing, laughter returned to the Brooks household almost every evening. Still, Sarah carried invisible scars. Loud noises startled her. Unexpected phone calls filled her with panic. She constantly worried someone from her past would find her. Jonathan never pressured her to explain more than she wished. Instead, he offered something she had nearly forgotten existed: safety. One afternoon, Sarah noticed Jonathan struggling to organize repair invoices scattered across the garage. She revealed she had studied accounting before dropping out of college after her parents died. Within hours she transformed months of financial chaos into a perfectly organized system. Jonathan realized his small repair business had been losing money simply because paperwork had overwhelmed him. Sarah volunteered to help. Within 6 months the business doubled its profits. Better scheduling, accurate invoices, and careful budgeting attracted larger commercial clients. Jonathan insisted Sarah accept a management position with a fair salary. For the first time since Noah's birth, Sarah earned enough to dream about renting her own apartment. Then the past returned. Kyle unexpectedly appeared after learning Jonathan's business had become successful. Pretending to care about Noah, he demanded custody while secretly hoping to gain access to Sarah's improving financial situation. Old fears resurfaced immediately. Sarah considered running again. Jonathan reminded her that running had never truly protected her. Standing together might. With help from experienced attorneys and documented evidence of abandonment, manipulation, and unpaid child support, Sarah finally faced Kyle in family court. The process lasted months. Every hearing reopened painful memories. Yet each time Sarah entered the courtroom, Grace hugged her first. Jonathan sat beside her without saying much. Sometimes silent support speaks louder than endless advice. The judge carefully reviewed years of evidence before granting Sarah full custody while restricting Kyle's contact until strict legal conditions were met. When the decision was announced, Sarah cried harder than she had the night Jonathan first found her on that lonely road. Only now they were tears of freedom. Life slowly settled into something beautiful. Sarah rented a small home only 5 minutes away from Jonathan and Grace. Although they lived separately, they remained deeply connected. Noah celebrated his first birthday surrounded by people who truly loved him. Jonathan's business continued expanding across western Pennsylvania. Grace excelled in school and proudly told everyone she had gained both a best friend and a little brother. Months later, Jonathan found an old photograph of Rebecca tucked inside a family Bible. Behind it rested a handwritten note she had once written years earlier. It simply read, "Love doesn't disappear when someone leaves this world. It grows whenever we choose to give it away." Those words changed everything. Jonathan finally understood that moving forward did not mean forgetting Rebecca. It meant honoring her by living the values she had taught him. As time passed, friendship between Jonathan and Sarah quietly deepened into genuine love, not because either of them was searching for someone new, but because healing had slowly replaced fear. Their relationship grew naturally through trust, patience, shared responsibilities, and countless ordinary moments that eventually became extraordinary. Nearly 2 years after that rainy night, Jonathan proposed during a community picnic where Grace and Noah were playing together beneath the same gray autumn sky that had once brought them together. Sarah accepted with tears of gratitude rather than surprise. Their wedding was small, simple, and filled with laughter instead of luxury. The guests never knew that everything had begun because one tired father had chosen compassion over convenience during a terrible storm. If this story has touched your heart so far, please support the channel by liking this video, sharing it with friends and family, and subscribing for more inspiring stories that remind us hope often arrives when we least expect it. Before we finish, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you had seen Sarah standing alone in the rain with her baby? Years later, Jonathan often drove along that same stretch of highway. Every time rain began falling, he remembered the night that almost passed like any other. He realized that life rarely announces its greatest blessings with perfect timing or comfortable circumstances. Sometimes they arrive soaked by the rain, carrying nothing but fear, hope, and a simple plea for help. The greatest miracles are not always found in extraordinary events but in ordinary people willing to stop when everyone else keeps driving. And because one single father chose kindness over caution, for broken hearts found a family they never imagined was waiting just beyond the storm.